Okay, so we have a new episode of Legends and Leaders, and today it's great to have Rich here. Rich, you're somebody that's been in the fashion space and the clothing space for quite some time. You've had a great imprint on PacSun and on taking the brand to incredible heights. And that the brand itself has so much influence on a younger generation. My sisters worked for PacSun at a point. It's a great place to be at and to really get a pulse for where the trends are. And you're involved in helping to make sure that the best items are there, and you have a great selection from around the world, and try to spot amazing new designers. So I'm excited to have you here and to get into your story.
Awesome. That's amazing. Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here today.
Great. So just going back to the beginning, how did your interest in wanting to be involved in business as a business leader, in the fashion space and apparel space, wanting to work in that, how did this interest of yours begin?
Yeah, I mean, it usually starts with a passion, and for me, it's probably an unexpected journey, um, which I'm starting to find there's a lot of people out there in the fashion world who didn't necessarily, go to design school or fashion merchandising school, things like that. Um, I actually studied psychology and poli sci when I was in college, but took some business courses. Obviously, was really passionate about fashion. And that year, my senior year, when I was trying to think about what to do next, I was at that crossroads where I was thinking I was gonna, take a year off, study for the LSAT, and go that more traditional route. Maybe even pursue something like a JD MBA. So business was always in the back of my mind as well. But PacSun was actually recruiting on our campus. And I took a flyer and met with some of the team there, and I knowing that I had that interest in business and in marketing and in just human behavior, plus couldn't help myself when it came to fashion, especially like aspirationally, things I couldn't afford. Really love that. It just seemed like really interesting to me. It seemed like a field that I wanted to give a shot, at least for a short term. So went ahead and applied and interviewed and started with PacSun's training program straight out of college. From there, I just continued to work my way up and build in my career. And I tell people all the time, retail, fashion, this is one of those things that you'll know pretty early on if it's something that you want to stick with and that you love and it's a career you want to make out of it, or if it's something you want to run away from. You'll find out pretty quickly, especially with how hard we work and how nimble you have to be as a person within the industry and how taxing it can be. And for me, it nipped me in the bud. Like I was ready to go. It was so exciting. I scrapped all intention of wanting to only take a couple of years off or a year off and go pursue a different route. And I've been doing it ever since.
Why do you think that PacSun decided, let's have Rich work with us?
Yeah, I think what was interesting is probably two things. One, I would like to think I expressed my passion for just product in those initial conversations and brands that I loved at the time and wanting to get, my hands on the best sneakers at that time and just probably my answers from a product perspective in terms of what was compelling to me or what I thought would be compelling to people my age at that time. And then also just I'm assuming I'd have to get into the minds of those who interviewed me, but I'm assuming just my thought process when it came to challenging or handling different challenges that are thrown your way, because that's a big piece of what we do. There is the creative function on the merchandising side, on the buying side, on the marketing side. There's definitely a creative function, but there's a lot of problem solving, thinking through how to get things to the next step, and just challenges that come in every day that you have to be able to take what you've learned from an experience standpoint, but also think critically about coming up with solutions that may not exist. And so I think maybe I was able to convey the right balance of both of those. You end up approaching people in the industry that are great on the creative side, or those that are great on the more tactical and problem solving side. But those who I think have the best careers and most longevity are those who have the right balance of the two.
Yeah, I think that's such an important point because so much of this becomes about problem solving, and there's always new things that come up. And so, that those skills, identifying that you had those skills is, I'm sure, essential to every day, but definitely important to the company. Can you just talk a bit about the merchandising space? And was that something you were always interested in getting involved in initially? How did that start to become a major focus of yours?
Yeah, I mean, when I had those initial conversations and just thought about taking this career route, the most compelling piece for me was, wait, I get to, have a job where I pick the product that would show up in these stores. And usually when you speak to young people today, that's very compelling to them too. It's amazing. And I remember the first day, the first time I had ever seen someone wearing product that I had either selected from a brand. Um, that was just mind blowing to me. It was so amazing. I had to like tap someone who was with me at the time and say, that right there, I picked that t-shirt. And it was a t-shirt. And what was even more unique about that is it was a special makeup product. So I know for a fact you couldn't get it anywhere else. You had to have gotten it at PacSun at that time. So just that feeling is it never gets old. I do think that is probably what was one of the big reasons I wanted to get into the field, and what kept me here is just that feeling of being able to have that influence. But then also being immersed in culture was a big deal for me too. The right balance from a merchandising perspective of being able to be immersed in culture, but then also being able to think creatively and contribute. We have a lot of responsibility as merchants in terms of this is the product that is being offered to everyone.
Yeah.
They're going to pick from what we assort, right? So that was really compelling to me. But then also, like I said earlier, that problem solving piece, like the merchant's job is definitely the right balance of those two. And I thrive on that.
How do you identify the right products to carry? Because you only have so much space. You really want to get the attention of people that come into your stores or, whether it's online. And there's so many new types of designers and designs coming out all the time. How do you figure out the ones that you think will work well and really select from this amazing plethora of designs that are out?
I wish it was one size fits all for the process, but it's not. It's the right balance of you know, trusting your gut, but then also there's lots of data at our disposal. And this is probably the case for merchants across all organizations and brands. There's a ton of data out there. So those who rely only on the data probably make bad decisions, especially probably holding on to things too long or a lot of last year-itis. Those who only rely on gut make a lot of bad decisions. They're a little too passionate and probably trying to bring in things that are way too new or just not going to resonate everywhere. And so it's you start each season out obviously wanting to look at some hindsight process and the data, but you're also going to take into account your shopping trips, what you're seeing locally, maybe hopefully internationally, depending on the organization you work for. And if you travel internationally, what you're seeing on social media, there's a lot of inputs that are not necessarily hard numbers. And then it's from there, the merchant, that's the secret sauce. That's where you earn your pay and advancing your career is you take those two separate categories of input and you make the right decisions.
Do you think that just Gen Z is so different from previous generations and their styles and stuff that may be hard to kind of keep up with that, or you're just having to consistently add new designs in? Like, how different is catering towards Gen Z now become?
Just the the impact of the digital expansion that cuts through our entire society is probably what makes it different. Probably more challenging, but just different in general in terms of trying to cater to Gen Z. There's just so much more at their disposal, and things move even quicker. And I know we've been saying this for years. Trends are moving faster, and then years later, trends are moving faster than that. And I think that's true. I think trends are moving faster. Things change faster and people it's hard to capture people's attention span for very long, right? So I do think that is the probably the most disruptive thing that has taken place and what makes this a unique time period and that generation, Gen Z, a unique generation is just the importance of keeping, we like to say, keeping your ears to the streets. So really paying attention to what's happening culturally, and being ready to pivot. So we have to be more nimble than ever, quicker than ever, and willing to change our mind because they're changing their mind. I think what's really important is, especially if you're in, you know, my part or this part of the industry. It's letting them help lead you. It's a communal decision making in terms of what's important out there from a fashion and trend perspective. And this generation in particular doesn't want necessarily retailers and brands dictating to them what is cool and meaningful to them.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very different relationship that there is now. I mean, specifically what you're talking about, because I think a lot of it was detailed by retail previously. You know, you control the selection. This is what people see. But now, I mean, with social media, it just, you kind of have to adapt to the trends that are out there. So specifically with that, like how do you stay ahead of trends? Like how do you, I mean, you mentioned, the sense that you have in the fashion space and your understanding of it, but even just planning ahead, stuff changes so fast today. There's just so many things that occur. How do you kind of stay ahead of trends, or maybe even just make the trends so you can be ahead of them?
It's important to just be out there, is what I tell at least my team. And so I guess I have to start with my team first and foremost. Hopefully it's the organization, the company you work for is full of just rock stars from a team perspective, and I feel like ours is. So that's where it's really important, that I just trust that everyone on my team is out there. They see what's going on. We have the right conversations. We're keeping each other abreast of what, this is what I saw, this is what you saw, right? But I also think it's just really important for you to still start with a plan. Just because things move quickly doesn't mean, I still feel like, you would fall short if you don't start with a plan. You have to start with a plan. You will adjust that plan 10 times before we get there. You have to start somewhere, and you have to be grounded in strategy. There has to be a strategy you go back to. Now, when there's pivot moments and things that change, I would hope, and I think part of our success is it still falls within that overarching strategy and that consistency we want to display as a brand, and what I feel like is important for us to display as a brand. But how we get there might be different. The what's important underneath that overarching strategy may change a bit. There may be some newness and some new ways we want to attack that. But in terms of pivoting whole overarching strategy as a company or organization, I think that would be challenging. So to answer your question, I would say, yeah, it's definitely interesting in terms of how we have to manage it from a team perspective. But we rely on our team to just be out and about, engaging with consumers, engaging with brands, shopping, things like that, like just being out and seeing what's going on in culture in case we need to adjust, a strategy that would happen in a boardroom.
Yeah, it's the approach you're talking about. It requires a lot of work. I mean, it's a very adaptive landscape to. You really have to be on lots of different angles. Um, you mentioned like how digital has like, really shaped things and changed stuff a lot. You guys still have a very strong retail presence, and it seems to be a key aspect of the brand. How important do you see retail being today, and what are some of the maybe the ways that retail's been so effective that digital is just unable to do? I mean, is it just really trying on products is kind of the big thing that you can feel them and see what they're like in person, and you can't get that online?
Yeah, it's funny. There was years of, um, I remember, I mean, it's got to be at least 5 years, probably even more, but there was the panic that brick and mortar retail was dead. Um,
Right.
Very much not the case. In fact, there's a lot of digitally native brands out there who are trying to find brick and mortar spaces because it's very important. I think it goes back to just, especially if, the youth is who you want to interact with and engage with from a brand perspective, you need to meet them where they are, and they're not just digitally focused. Obviously, it's a big piece, but they shop in person too. In fact, it's probably one of the most important ways that they get to know who your brand is. And to your point, it is trying on the product, but it's also engaging with the brand to get a better sense of what the brand stands for that would be hard to communicate in just words and images online. It's the look and feel of your store, the music that's being played in your store, the the associates that work for you in your store. That all of that is a branding opportunity that helps convey the message and what a brand is about, that then can be reinforced for sure on digital and vice versa. I mean, you could say that the brick and mortar is reinforcing what digital is showing. So we as people, and the youth is no different. Like, we need the multiple touch points, and so I think that's why we haven't seen brick and mortar's complete demise.
Yeah, it's an interesting point you bring up. I think it's so important brick and mortar today, and it's definitely been overlooked. And like you mentioned, that people were talking about how it was going to go away, and it didn't even matter. And we went that extreme. But it's I think it puts your brand in a different place. Having a retail presence and gives you another way to just interact with people that you can't get elsewhere. And it seems like Gen Z also really has cared a lot about stores
Yep.
and prioritize that more than maybe what people would have expected, even though they grew up in this digital age. They care about stores a lot.
Yeah, I think also it's a nice reprieve from, we spend a lot of time on our phones, spend a lot of time digitally. Sometimes it's just good to, engage with a person in person. And so it offers that. And I think they're craving that a bit more too. So very important. And I think we see it in our results too. Our store business has been very strong. We had a great year in stores. Yeah.
What are some of the areas now, like Rich, that you want to expand to? Like areas that, you really, I mean, maybe even from a personal standpoint, that you really want to focus on and improve in or just grow in, and also from a brand standpoint, like what are some areas that, you really want to help take PacSun to that maybe they haven't been in yet?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to our just strategy in general, inspire the youth. And I'm really sold on that strategy, and I really truly believe in it. Not just for our company, but I think personally, it's what keeps me here and keeps me so excited to do the work that we do every day. And the way we, want to inspire that youth is we say it's through four pillars of culture. We want to be engaged in culture. And those four pillars are fashion, which obviously makes sense to us in terms of we're a fashion retail brand, music, art, and sports. We think those four pillars are very important and crucial to, you know, engaging in culture, influencing culture, what drives what inspires the youth. So I think when you talk about or when you ask, what do I want to do moving forward? How do we continue to move into new categories? It's kind of staying within those four pillars, those four categories: fashion, music, art, and sports, but finding more unique ways to engage that just continues to, surprise that customer and especially for a retailer or a fashion brand to be able to engage in music, art, and sport in addition to fashion, just continue to surprise people. So I do think it's 100% that overarching strategy staying there, but building upon it. So, we may have worked with the Met and the art space, but there's got to be other ways to engage in art. So this year we started to work with individual artists and through our Pack Artist Network. And I want to continue to build on that, but pretty soon I'm going to try to think of a different angle for us to play in the art space as well. From a sports standpoint, we're engaging in different leagues. We've worked with the LA Rams in the NFL. We've got a great partnership with Formula One racing, and also just in the MLS with LA Football Club. So I want to continue to build on those, but there's other leagues that we may want to do, or there's other ways we want to engage in sports. From a music standpoint, we've worked with a lot of different artists, not just on product, but in terms of having concerts or meet and greets in our stores. So I want to continue to build on those by either introducing new artists or finding different ways to just play in that space without revealing too much. But and then obviously fashion's our lifeblood. So that's what excites me, and that's what I think we want to continue to build on. I think the other part that I'm really excited about personally is how we can build that message, not just here in the US, but just broaden that scope. So can we continue to grow it globally? Can we become a brand that's known more globally? Because we're starting to, build lots of momentum here in the US. And then finally, how do we impact the community positively is an important thing to me as well. And so a lot of what we do has a community angle, has us engaging with directly with the consumers and bringing them into the process. And if we're going to say we want to inspire the youth, we need to do that not just by selling product to them and marketing to them, but also how do we positively impact their lives and help them. So that's more of a personal goal as well in terms of what I would like to do with the rest of my career. And the good thing is I think it syncs up pretty well with what we want to do as a brand too.
Yeah, it's great that you really care about the mission, because sometimes people don't, and it's like just a couple of words that are there, and it seems like you really have you taken this on as something you truly care about and want to implement, and you want to inspire the youth, and that's awesome to see that.
Yeah, no, I really mean it. I think part of that is just being a key stakeholder who helps to craft that vision. So, of course, it would be one that I'm sold on, but I like to think those who work for our organization are also very much on board with how we want to, engage and have a strategy that makes sense and actually means something, and that we want to be a purpose-driven brand.
Hmm. So just the last question I have, if you had to break down some goals, like short-term goals, long-term goals, that are really important to you right now, what would those goals be?
Short-term goals, we got to continue to grow. Obviously, right? I don't get to have fun with different partnerships and different marketing activations and by the product if we're not returning the results. So short term, want to make sure we continue to our growth trajectory from a financial standpoint, and also profitability matters. So it's a key thing for us. Another short-term goal is we really got to continue to build on the music space as an organization or as a company. It's one of our four pillars. It's probably the one that we had the most work to really stand behind that in a bigger way. And the same thing for the art space. I think sports feels really good and fashion feels great in terms of what we're doing. We'll never give up on either of those. Those are going to continue to be a key focus too. But music and art, hopefully short term, we step those up even more than what people have seen in the past. And then kind of going back to my note on wanting to build the brand um, and expand and broaden our reach, I think that's more of a short, if not medium term. Can we get some global reach here as a brand? I think that is a key goal. We've got a bit of a wholesale business where we've gotten a taste of international presence, and I'm hoping we can continue to build on that, whether it's through wholesale or through opening our own locations. But there is some international aspiration that I would like the experience to be a part of at a company. So I think that's a good goal for us. But then, yeah, long term, really sinking our teeth into this more purpose driven work from a community standpoint and from integrating the youth. So I do think, 5 years from now, I want to make sure that we look back and there's like a unique creative way that PacSun has been able to figure out to how to communicate directly with the youth in a way that they're influencing our product very tangibly, more directly, and on a day-to-day business, but then also they're using us as a platform for making things happen in their community. So that's more of a long-term goal, and we got to figure out how to make that happen, whether from a technological standpoint or just from a strategic standpoint, how to make that happen in a seamless way. But I do think I want to be able to look back and say that we figured that out.
A lot of important goals. It's great. Well, I think the international expansion is going to be amazing to see because, just in the United States, you guys have a really loved brand. A lot of people enjoy it. I've been to countless PacSun stores all around. And so seeing that really scale around is going to be amazing to see. And just the ways you continue to engage with culture. So, I mean, that was all the questions that I had. I appreciate you taking the time and doing this and definitely looking forward to what's in store. And the new types of clothing and different pieces of fashion you're going to continue to bring to the forefront of the space. So wishing you much success and thanks for coming on.
Thank you. Appreciate that.